Third Reich tutorial number 6, supply. When is supply determined? During the movement phase of the player who owns the unit, after naval movement but before ground movement. If a unit is out of supply, it may still attack in the offensive or the attrition attack option. However, a unit that is out of supply may not move, it may not advance, and may not strategically relocate. And at the end of the turn, it is eliminated. This has consequences for how armored units are used on the breakthrough. Here we have German units that have attacked Russian units, and armored units have gone into the rear of the Russian units. And here you can see the shaded areas are the 6 contiguous adjacent zones of control of each armored unit. And because supplies must be traced to units, and supplies may not be traced to zones of control, all of these units, except for this unit here, are out of supply. So after the German turn, the Russians would have one turn to rectify the situation, or large numbers of their units would go out of supply. Now, supply sources are capitals for the major countries, and they apply to the same side. So Berlin and Italy, Berlin and Rome would provide supplies to Italians and Germans. Paris would provide supplies to English. However, Moscow does not provide supply to any non-Russian units, and Russians may not be supplied by other Allied capitals. Air units, sea units, and partisans are not affected by supplies, whether they're absent or not. There are limitations on supplies in the Mediterranean that I'll elaborate on in a moment, but ports in Libya can provide supplies to Axis forces. Here's Tripoli, for example, and here is Tobruk. Ports in Egypt can provide supplies to the Allies, such as Port Said, Alexandria, and the Suez. Beirut provides supplies to the French, as does Tunis. Supplies are available to any unit inside a fortress, whether it be Malta, or Sevastopol, or Gibraltar, or Leningrad. Incidentally, units inside those fortifications also have their defense strength multiplied by 4. But not the Maginot Line, because that is a hex side and not a fortification hex. So they do not provide supply. The east edge of Russia provides supplies for Russian forces. Durazzo in Albania provides supply to the Italians. Königsberg provides supply to the Germans in East Prussia until the Germans achieve a supply line, and then it's canceled. Now, a supply line must be a length of any number of hexes that connect from the capital to the unit. It may not pass through an enemy zone of control in a hex, even if that hex is occupied by a friendly unit. So it's important to maintain armored units to keep them away from your supply lines. And that line may be of unlimited length. Now, fleets may provide supply. Here we have a fleet in Gibraltar. Each fleet may provide supplies to a number of land units equal to the number of factors. So this British fleet from Gibraltar could supply up to 9 British units located across the Mediterranean at different ports. This fleet may not do anything. It may not intercept, it may not do combat. However, it may relocate its base. And this is important, you can imagine, for when American units deploy from England to France, they would need American ships to provide supplies for those American units that are landing. The typical chain of supply would be from the capital, a number of hexes to a port, which has a ship in the port, and then from that port to another port where the ground units could then trace their supply to the port. Now, there's one elaboration. The British could supply into the Mediterranean by having a ship based in Portsmouth. It would then supply the ship in Gibraltar, which would then supply units across the Mediterranean, such as in Greece. Some ports can serve different fronts, such as Istanbul or Kiel. So if there's a ship based there, they can provide support to different parts of the Baltic. Supply lines may not be traced through hexes occupied by partisans. Exploiting armored units and airborne units are in supply until the next turn. Now there's one important application of the supply rule, and that's the supply rule applied to the Mediterranean. In the Mediterranean, you have ports that can supply Italian units like Tobruk and Tripoli, but Malta blocks German supplies in the North African coast. The Germans may deploy a maximum of 18 factors, a combination of different units that are deployed in North Africa. That 18 can be reduced for every naval and air factor that are deployed at Malta. Because Malta may have a maximum of 1 9 unit and 1 5 4 air unit, 9 plus 5 is 14, the Germans could be reduced from 18 minus 5 minus 9 down to as 4 units. So obviously there's a premium for the Italians and Germans to capture and destroy Malta. This also applies to Germans that are deployed in other parts of the Mediterranean, including the Levant, such as the Germans being supplied at Antioch, Beirut, Haifa, or Port Said. Here, the total is 18 minus each of the air factors that are deployed either in Crete, Rhodes, or Cyprus, or any naval unit that's east of the Suez Canal. And here there's no limit. So if there's 2 British fleets or Allied fleets, they subtract the total number of Germans that may operate there.